Well, welcome to Tri-County Church. My name is Chris, and I'm one of the pastors here. And I just want to extend a warm welcome to everyone across all of our locations. And we're in this series titled Shift, Opt for the Exceptional. And this week I went to social media and I posted this. I'm so mad I could. And then I invited people to fill in the blank. And I tell you, I was so overwhelmed by the number of responses. And as I read through all of them multiple times, I'm not sure. There's moments where I'm like, I want to laugh. But then there's moments where I'm like, well, it's kind of disturbing. And so I just want to invite you. You can laugh and feel disturbed at the same time. And so I pulled out 10 of my, I would hate to say favorite, but they are my favorite. My favorite ones that people responded with. I'm so mad I could throat punch someone. I mean, again, hilarious and disturbing all at once. This next one, well, I'm so mad I could donkey kick someone in the chest. Here's the thing. I want video evidence of a human being donkey kicking someone. Now, I don't want them to hurt the person. I just want to see practically how someone actually could do that. I'm so mad I could kick a puppy. Okay, that's sad. My wife, who absolutely hates dogs, I mean, she really does. She just hates dogs. When she read this one, she actually had a moment of sympathy. She was like, oh, that's sad. And I'm like, you don't like dogs. And I thought to myself, well, I hate cats with all my being, and the thought of someone kicking a little precious kitten, I don't want to admit it, but it kind of made me sad for a moment. I'm so mad I could fire up a chainsaw. I want to be friends with that person. I'm so mad I could rip a tree out of the ground. I'm so mad I could spit fire and save matches. Now this person, is both, leveraging his anger in one way and being financially, fiscally prudent. I mean, right? It's it combines both worlds together. I'm so mad. I can't really post that on here. And then these 3 emojis were literally used. And I think we all get what this person is saying. I'm so mad I could poke a sharp stick in my eye. I'm like, well, it's one thing to inflict harm on other people. I guess you could get that mad where you just, I don't even want to think about that. I'm so mad I could dig a hole, bury you, restore it, and nobody would find you. Again, I want to be friends with this person, but this person didn't stop there. In parentheses, she said, just saying, and then there's a ha, ha, ha. And here's my question. What's the voice inflection of the ha, ha, ha? Is that the ha, 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 laughter? I'm joking, I'm kidding, it's funny. Or is it that deep maniacal ha, ha, ha? That's my question. Well, moving on. I'm so mad I could give a nasty eye roll and death stare just like my teenage daughter does. If you have teenage daughters, if you've had teenage daughters, you know that nasty eye roll and the death stare. It is something. I heard about it. Now I have teenage daughters and I'm living through it. Well, then there's this one. I'm so mad I could never speak to you again and hold a grudge against you for all eternity. And when I read that one, again, the other ones were both disturbing and hilarious all at once. But when I read this one, that's where we're going today. Because we've all experienced someone being so mad at us for something maybe you did, or something that they thought you did, and you were really innocent. But anyway, it doesn't matter. They were that mad at you that they still won't talk to you. They still won't respond to you. They still won't text you. They still won't email you back. They won't message you. They won't look at you if they see you in the store. They're so mad. And also, I'm sure that we all have someone to this day that we're still so mad at that we won't respond and we won't text message back and we won't look at and we won't reach out and we have cut them off. You see, there's this emotion called anger. And the thing with anger is it's not some small, inconsequential emotion, is it? I mean, when anger erupts, it literally, it consumes us. It takes over. Mentally, it's all we can think about is what we want to do against that person, how we want to get that person back. Mentally, you can think of nothing else. But the thing is with anger, it's not just mentally. Physically, our bodies change when we get angry. The heart races. Sweat starts to pour out. Physiologically, your blood that's located kind of in your gut region, actually your body pushes it all out to all of your muscles. It's this fight or flight response. Anger takes over. And there's two different categories of people of how they deal with anger. The first one is erupters. And we all know an erupter. Maybe you're an erupter. Maybe your dad or mom was an erupter. Maybe you're married to an erupter. You know when they're angry. There's nothing hiding the fact that they are angry. Again, you can see their face turn a different shade of red. You can see the vein pop out in their neck. Their fists are clenched. You know they are angry. It's the erupters that, they become kind of famous or more infamous on social media. Videos are shared about them erupting all over someone, and you watch it, and it's like this weird entertainment where it kind of sucks you in. But in another moment, you're thinking to yourself, like, this is just sad that this person is so angry that they're saying they're doing this against someone. And so the erupters usually get the bad press. But there's another category. It's the stuffers. They stuff it all inside. They go stoic. They don't let that emotion out. You don't see a red face. You don't see the vein pop. It is all concealed and hidden. But here's the thing. A stuffer, they're not going to have video footage of a stuffer, in public, right? Like that's not great media for people to watch. But what they're finding out is the physical damage with stuffers is almost greater than erupters. They're starting to link heart disease, heart issues to people that stuff all of that anger emotion. They're starting to link cancer and cancer growth to stuffers, people that stuff that emotion. Chronic fatigue and pain is linked to people that stuff all of that emotion. So which one are you? That's the question. Are you an erupter or are you a stuffer? We did a poll this week. And the poll was simply, you had a choice. Would I have to wear a Cowboys jersey or a Pittsburgh jersey? Well, last week, and we also had people as we released kind of that poll, because this whole series is about a series of choices. And so every weekend we've had different polls with different choices. And so this happened to be for this weekend. And what's interesting, all of a sudden these Eagles fans started to raise up and were like, hey, Pennsylvania has more than one football team. There's the Steelers and the Eagles. Why aren't the Eagles part of this poll? So we added the Eagles, and all week, I'm like going, I would rather wear a Steelers jersey than an Eagles jersey. I'm just being honest there, right? And the whole time I'm watching this poll as people are voting. It was neck and neck, and I thought there was a period of time this week I thought I was going to have to wear a Steelers jersey yet again, and I felt some of that, like, not anger, but it was close going, I just don't want to wear a Steelers jersey again. I don't want to hear people say, that looks really good on you, black and gold, black and gold. I don't want to hear about the number of Super Bowls that the Steelers have won compared to the Cowboys. Right? Like I felt all of that within me. And maybe just you right now, seeing me, for some of you, just seeing me in a Cowboys jersey, right? You feel that emotion. Again, maybe you wouldn't call it anger, but it's tiptoeing close to it. And either you're going to let that come out and you're going to say to someone, I can't believe he's wearing that, or you're going to stuff it. Again, we're all in one or two of those categories. And here's the thing. If you're married to an erupter or a stuffer. Growing up, your mom, your dad, your grandparents, whoever raised you, they were either an erupter or stuffers. And either you find yourself handling that emotion, handling anger like your mom, your dad, your grandparents, or you've swung the pendulum way to the other side saying, I'm never going to be like them. But you're in one of two of these categories, and both of them are so destructive for you personally, but also for every single person that you come in contact with. So as we think about this subject matter of anger, the Bible actually talks about it in two different ways. There's two different ways anger can be positioned. The first one is the destructive type, and this is probably what we're all the most familiar with. And actually the Bible says that there's a sinful type of anger, and that's why it's so destructive. It's destructive to you on the soul level, but also physically and emotionally, but it's destructive to every person that you leverage that anger against. And then there's a second type, and we'll get to the second type, we'll hear in a few moments. So how? How do you handle anger without anger handling you? Right? When it comes to the destructive type of anger, how are you going to handle that emotion that is going to well up within you, that's going to rage within you, that also in one moment you're having an okay day, a good day, maybe it's an awesome day, and the next moment you just feel all of that emotion rage. How do you handle anger without anger handling you? Well, the Apostle Paul wrote to a group of people located in the city of Ephesus. And, well, this is what he wrote. He goes, in your anger, do not sin. And what's great about this is he's saying there's a way for you to experience all of that anger and not sin, to experience all that anger and not be destructive. There's a way for you to experience this emotion, but not hurt yourself and hurt other people around you. So throughout this series, Shift, we've been really anchoring into this collection of Proverbs. The book of the Bible is literally called Proverbs, but this ancient wisdom that is just timeless in all of our lives. And throughout Proverbs, there's all of this great wisdom on how to help us experience anger, but not sin in our anger, how to handle anger without anger handling us. So hopefully, these are going to be some tools to help you as you experience anger in your daily, normal life. So here's the first one. You got to restrain it. You just got to restrain it. The wisdom writer wrote, fools vent their anger, but wise quietly hold it back. Remember, in Proverbs, there's two categories of people, the fools and the wise. And I think all of us, we all want to be wise, right? We don't want the label, the name badge that says fools. We want the wise. And the wisdom writer just says, hey, fools vent their anger. But wise, well, they quietly hold it back. They don't stuff. So if you're sitting there and you're a stuffer and you're thinking to yourself, yeah, see, Chris, I can stuff it. So no. They're going to hold it back. They're not going to allow it to rage. And that's the difference. You can restrain your anger. And maybe you're sitting there right now going, yeah, Chris, no, but when my temper flares, I can't restrain it. I can't hold it back. I can't control it. It's just too much. Well, let me give you two scenarios and see if you can restrain it. You're at home. You get in an argument with your spouse or someone you're dating, and you're just yelling and screaming at each other. I mean, it is heated. Spit's flying, words are flying, and all of a sudden, the doorbell rings. What do you do in that moment? I know what you do. The yelling and screaming stops immediately. You walk to the door. You open that door. I mean, right before you open it, I mean, it is on, and then you open it, and the smile comes. You're like, oh, it's great to see you. Come on in. And for the next 10 minutes, hour, 2 hours, you have a lovely conversation with this person. You can. For many of you, you've experienced this next scenario before. You wake up on a Sunday morning, or maybe it's a Saturday, or you get the family ready to go to church, and you jump in your car, and something ignites, and the entire drive to church, you're just screaming back and forth. You're screaming with your kids. You're screaming with your spouse. You're screaming with your girlfriend, your boyfriend. I mean, you know. I mean, it is on in the car. The fireworks are erupting. I mean, spit, again, is flying. It's covering the inside of the windshield. And all of a sudden, you pull into the church parking lot, whatever campus you go to. Maybe it's a coffee shop parking lot up in Ridgeway. And right when the car turns off, what happens? Everyone gets out of the car. Smiles go on the faces, and you walk in. You're like, hey, it's good to see all of you. See, here's the thing. You can restrain it. The question is, are you going to? And that's why don't talk with your anger. Talk about it. And those are two different things. When we talk with it, we use our words and the anger that's entangled into our words as a club to beat someone. We now use our words to hurt someone. We now position our words, because the anger is infused into it, with the goal to tear someone down. My wife and I, early on in marriage, we started to develop a list. It's a literal list. It's not long. But we both have a list, and on those lists are very specific things that we have promised we will never use against the other person. Again, it's a short list, it's a specific list. And we've just said, when we get into an argument, we will never use, and I'm not going to give you what it is, but we'll never say these things, because those things, man, it's not just a club against someone. I mean, you're firing missiles at that person. So don't talk with your anger. Talk about it. Because there's something about, I'm feeling this way. This is welling up within me. And when you can talk about what's going on within you, now you can self-discover. And it's going to help you restrain it. Well, the next way to handle your anger without anger handling you is to defer. And the wisdom writer wrote this: sensible people control their temper. This idea of controlling your temper literally means to lengthen it, to draw it out. Because we know when anger hits, I mean, it hits hard and fast and with a fury. And what the wisdom writer is saying is, okay, when that hits, you gotta, yes, control, but you gotta lengthen it out. You gotta draw it out. Take some of that sting out of it. And so there's a couple just very practical ways for you to control that temper, to draw it out, to lengthen it, to defer it. The first one is this, is when you feel angry about a situation, you gotta seek wisdom. You gotta seek wise counsel. When someone in your company makes a decision and that decision goes directly against the decision you had made, when all of a sudden you read a company email and someone's attacking you personally, when you enter into a tension moment with a parenting issue and you're just not seeing eye to eye with your husband or your wife, or maybe it's an ex-husband, an ex-wife, right? You're just not seeking eye to eye or seeing eye to eye. You got to seek wise counsel. And here's what happens. When you go seek wise counsel, you're drawing out that anger. You're allowing that anger to start to dissipate. You're allowing things to settle. And at the same time, getting great wisdom on how to handle the situation. I don't know how many times I've done this. Like, I will receive a text from someone, and I feel all of that anger, that rage start to boil up. And I'll go to someone and say, hey, read this. What do you think? And all of a sudden they'll say, I think it's a pretty good text. What's wrong? And then I pause and I look back at it and I read it again. And all of a sudden I realize, oh, how I was reading it was so off base. I don't know how many times I've sat down with someone and said, how do I handle this leadership situation or this relationship situation? And just taking the time to seek wise counsel helps to lengthen it out. The next one is to leap. One of the values we have within our leadership circles at Tri-County is to leap the gap. You see, when a gap emerges relationally, something's going to fill it. The question is, what's going to fill it? And usually when the gap emerges, there's some hurt there. Two people aren't seeing eye to eye, and it's so easy for anger to fill that gap. And so what we say all the time is, you don't solve issues via text. You don't solve relational tension via email. You don't solve hurt relationally via Facebook Messenger. You go sit with that person. You choose to leap the gap. You need to sit knee to knee, toe to toe with that person, and you need to have a conversation with them. And here's the thing. When you don't leap the gap, anger will just continue to grow and widen the gap. And here's what we do as human beings when that happens. We start applying so much emotion to that other person. We think we know exactly how they feel. We think we know exactly their motives. We think we know exactly their tone of voice. We think we know exactly their perspective. And what I found is most of the time, I get that completely wrong. And so part of leaping the gap, we just don't, as a church leadership team, we don't handle conflict via any type of written communication. We do it in person. We sit down with people. We have conversations with people. Because when you do that, right, it's very hard for anger now to creep in when you sit down with someone and look them in the eyes and say, hey, there's a gap. I'm here to try to close it with you. The next one is to own. In part 2 last week, one of those steps was to face yourself. And you got to own what you got to own. And when you take time to go, what part in this situation must I own? What part in this situation must I hold on to? What part in this situation is my fault? When you take time, I'm telling you, that's going to lengthen out that anger. It's going to allow things to calm down. It's going to force you to stare at yourself in the mirror and start to own what only you can own. And the last one is to withdraw. And again, this is not to leave it and never come back to it. But there's times you got to just pull away. My wife and I call it the 24-hour rule. It's just sometimes you need 24 hours. Sometimes a good night's sleep does the conflict so much good. You wake up the next morning, you're both rested, you're calmed down, and now you can actually have a good conversation. Sometimes you just need to walk out of the situation for a moment, take a deep breath. Maybe that's to seek wise counsel. Maybe that's to get some wisdom around what you need to own yourself before you engage again. Sometimes withdrawing just means go work out. Remember, when anger emerges and rages within you, your body physically reacts to it. It's the flight or fight response. Your body, your brain starts to push blood from important areas at that moment into all of your muscle groups. Adrenaline and cortisol all rages through your body. And sometimes withdrawal just means go for a run, go for a hike. Just work out all of that energy so that you can come back and have a life-giving conversation. And maybe you've already caught up on this, but the biggest thing you need to do when you when you enter into a conflict and anger is raging, you need to go slow. That's why James says, be slow to anger. And so many times anger is our first response. And it should be our last response. And if you go slow, I'm just telling you, you're not going to sin in your anger. Well, another way to handle your anger without your anger handling you is to overlook it. And this is the second part of that proverb we just looked at. The first part was sensible people control or lengthen, right, their temper. And then it says they earn respect by overlooking wrongs. And that's just part of this. Hurting people hurt people. And all of us, you have an element of hurt within you right now. I, Chris Trethewey, have an element of hurt within me right now. And here's the thing, hurting people hurt people. And when we understand that, like we hurt people, intentionally, unintentionally. I mean, sometimes with like laser-like focus, we hurt people, and other times we just will never know unless they leap the gap to us and let us know. And we just have to get to the point where we're just going to overlook. We're just going to pass over. We're just going to say, yeah, that hurt. I'm okay. I'm just going to move on with my day. It's why we say we're to love first. In every interaction, let's just love first. Have you ever thought about why when someone cut you off in that grocery store line or Walmart or Target or whatever store you're at, they cut you off, they step in front of you, and all of a sudden you're just staring at them and you're just having like all of those bad thoughts, right? Have you ever wondered like why? And does it matter? And when you love people first, you start thinking, well, maybe they didn't see me. Or maybe they just got a phone call with some bad news and they're in a fog. Maybe, just maybe, financially things are really tight and all they're thinking about is how they're going to afford that gallon of milk and gas. And they're not there to shop. They're there because they're just trying to survive. You see, when we pause and go, I'm just going to love that person first, we start to think, well, maybe, just maybe, I should pray for them instead of getting angry that they cut me off or stepped in front of me or said something to me. And you got to just overlook, say, I'm just going to choose to love people first. Why? Because God has loved me first. And that's why the foundation of true knowledge, Proverbs 1 verse 7, the foundation of true knowledge is to fear God. And the more you realize that God continues to overlook your sin because he has extended grace to you, because he loved you first, I'm telling you, it will give you the capacity to love other people first. And the last one, how to handle your anger without anger handling you is you just got to prevent it. Don't allow it to rage. The wisdom writer wrote, starting a quarrel is like opening a floodgate to stop before a dispute breaks out. And that's why you got to go slow. Before you even allow it to go there, before you allow the quarrel, withdraw. Go seek wise counsel. You see how those go together? Before a quarrel even starts, own what you need to own. What is it within you that you need to own? Because if you don't start with you, pride will blind you. And you know that pride has blinded you when it's always everyone else's fault and it's never your fault. Stop. Before it even gets to that level, stop. Go slow. Seek wise counsel. Leap the gap. Go to that person. Don't allow a Facebook, email, text message interchange. Don't do it. I don't. I tell you right now, I never handle conflict via text message, email, Facebook, you name the method. I don't. I will respond to people and say, I would love to talk with you. Just not going to do it. Just not going to do it. Why? Because that stops it before it breaks out. Well, I'd mentioned that there was two kind of types of anger found in the Bible, destructive. And we've been looking at ways, practical tools, how to avoid that destructive, sinful anger. But there's another anger that we find in the Bible, and it's righteous anger. Because guess what? In the Old Testament, God gets angry. And in the New Testament, Jesus, God the Son, gets angry. But God's without sin. They've never sinned. And that's why Paul confidently said, hey, in your anger, don't sin. Because God is without sin. But yet, we see examples of God getting angry. One of the examples, we find Jesus. And he was actually headed into the synagogue, the church building per se. And it was the Sabbath, the holy day. And in the Jewish culture, the Jewish custom, there was all of these rules attached to the Sabbath day where you couldn't work and there's very little you could do. It was supposed to be a day of rest that God had orchestrated, but over the thousands of years, they have taken something that God meant for good for men and women, and all of a sudden they had just complicated it because we as human beings complicate everything. And so there's all these laws now attached to the Sabbath. And Jesus went into the synagogue on the Sabbath, and he knew that the Pharisees, the religious leaders, the religious rulers, were only there to try to trap him, to trick him, to get Jesus to break the law. And Jesus asked them, the Pharisees, which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil, to save life or to kill? But they remained silent because they knew that they were there for one reason, not to learn, not to seek wisdom, not to have a conversation that unified people. They knew that they were there. The Pharisees were there for one reason. They wanted to trap and trick Jesus, to get him arrested, to discredit him. And so they just wanted no part of the conversation. So Jesus, well, he looked around at them in anger and deeply distressed at their stubborn hearts. And he said to them, stretch out your hand. This man who had a withered hand. And again, it was illegal. It was against the law because that would have been work on the Sabbath. And Jesus said, stretch out your hand. And he stretched it out, and his hand was completely restored. So let me ask you this question. What does God care about? Because God's righteous anger is always tied into what he deeply, deeply cares about. And for Jesus, God doesn't deeply, deeply care about this law. I mean, that's why Jesus said, no, I'm going to bring it all down to love. That's going to be the driving law for everyone. In that moment, Jesus is going, really? I could heal this man on the Sabbath, change, not just his physical life. He had to beg just to survive. Or am I going to follow all of these rules? See, Jesus just demonstrated it was all about that person. What am I going to do to help this guy? And when we start asking the question, what does God care about? We should get angry at the things that God cares about that aren't being done. And allow that righteous anger to propel you into action. There's some 12 to 15,000 foster kids in the state of Pennsylvania right now. And maybe that's something you deeply care about, the livelihood of kids in difficult situations. And you should get angry about that because God cares for every single child, not just in the state of Pennsylvania, but around the world. But allow that anger to propel you into action. God cares about your marriage. And right now, all of your anger is at each other And what you need to do is pull back and say, no, God cares about the two becoming one. That there's something beautiful when people start to realize that their marriage is something holy. And get angry at the fact that you're showing anger towards each other. And that breaks God's heart. Get angry at the fact that you're so far in debt because of your choices. And that you're living paycheck to paycheck to paycheck because you have a house you can't really afford and a car you can't really afford and credit cards that you've racked up. And get angry at the fact that what God has given you, you just wanted more, that God wants for you to live in financial freedom. He wants you to be free from that debt, and get mad that God wants that freedom for you. So do something about it. I don't know what it is, but what God cares about, you should get mad at those things that's not being done. Allow that to propel you into action. Well, your wise choices today will follow you into tomorrow, which will reveal your past. And that includes either how you handle your anger or how you allow your anger to handle you.